Welcome, everybody. I hope you're doing well, and I'm pleased to be joined by Joe from the Albion Obsessed podcast to get the Albion perspective ahead of Tuesday night's game. Joe, thank you for taking time out of your day to do this, and let's start with a general one. How's your season going?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a up and down one. I think to be expected with our first ever foray into European football.
Of course, of course.
Um, we've had a lot of injuries. We've got a lot of injuries now. Um, to really important players, but we're lucky in the sense that a lot of our young guns have stepped up to the plate when called upon. The latest that stepped up to the plate is Jack Hinshelwood. Everyone always says, "Oh, Brighton are pulling names out of left field," and they always seem to be scoring goals. But that's just how well our club is run. We've got these succession planning things in place that if someone's out injured, if someone leaves for a big transfer fee, we've got someone else to come in and do exactly the same job. I say exactly the same job. It hasn't been the form that Roberto De Zerbi would like, or the fans would like, or even the players would like. You know, we haven't kept a Premier League clean sheet this season. But again, I think that's just a product of high risk, high reward football from Roberto De Zerbi. And, our last game against Tottenham was a perfect example of that. We go 4-0 up and, and then Tottenham need to come back into the game and score goals. And our fans are like, how have we not kept a clean sheet? But you're playing against Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League, they're going to score goals. If they're 4-0 down, they've got nothing to lose. So yeah, as I say, it's been a weird one, but a really exciting one as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on our European adventures. But yeah, it's been okay.
Yeah, because of course, from the outside, I mean, you just look at it, Brighton fixtures coming up, you look at where you are on the table, you've got through in Europe quite comfortably. It seems to be going quite swimmingly, and then you sort of look into it a little bit and you see, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd obviously know better than I would. Is it 3 wins in the Premier League in the last 13 or so, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
There's obviously been a period here where because your season started so unbelievably strongly, just win after win after win, just batting them away, that gave you the opportunity to, well, I don't know, has it been hit by, have you been feeling the hits of Europe like we certainly do every Sunday after Thursday? We seem to be just that little bit worse than we would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. I think Roberto De Zerbi has spoken so much about getting to a new level mentally for the players, and
Yeah.
it's so evident in our performances sometimes that we just don't start quick enough. We're already chasing the game, and a lot of times this season we've had to sort of fight back. Whereas last season it was very much Brighton on the front foot, and if a team want to
Mm.
beat us, they've got to outwit us. But now I think that it's sort of shifted a little bit, that people are thinking, okay, Brighton are vulnerable from the off, so we can just hit them. And, I think a perfect example of it was earlier on in the season. Granted, we hadn't started our European football yet, but you guys, West Ham, came to our place, played patiently, knew our weaknesses, and then beat us 3-0. So I think we're seeing a lot of teams slightly working us out at the moment. However, I think Roberto De Zerbi's getting on top of that now, because we're starting to see that slight shift in mentality he's been talking about. And I think everyone talks about our rotation. We've had something ridiculous like 70 changes to our starting 11 from the start of the season to now, which is something ridiculous, like 35 more than the team in second place. However, I truly believe that towards the latter stage of the season, we'll see the rewards from that, because we will have players that aren't as fatigued. Take Aston Villa, for
Mm.
example. They've only had, I think, 18 changes to their starting 11. That's the last time I checked before their last couple of games anyway. But I'm predicting you'll probably see them drop off, and we get players back. Hopefully we bolster in January as well, and we see a really big push towards something really special in the next part of the season. So I don't think Brighton fans are panicking too much at the moment, because Roberto De Zerbi, he seems to bring a level of calm to the fan base, and to say, we've got this. Don't worry. Whatever players we will bring up to the starting 11, that they're ready. So I think and certainly in the last few results, we've seen that as well. We've had such a thin squad. I think against Tottenham, we had 12 players available to start the game. So that's not much for Roberto De Zerbi to think on. However, the performance we saw in that first half, especially, was one of the performances I've seen for the last 10 years. It was a spectacular performance from us. And I just hope we can continue that. It's a hard task to be able to continue that with. We've got 2 more injuries to add. Igor and Buonanotte took knocks in the Tottenham game. So what does that leave us with? I think it leaves us with 10 available players to start. So where's the next? Where's the 11th coming from? Probably the under 23s. We've got 1 fit centre back. So we're in a bit of a pickle. However, I don't know how we're doing it. We still sit 8th in the Premier League table, and we've won our Europa League group. So let's just hope that luck continues for us.
And how did you find Europe? Because obviously, it seemed from the outside to go poorly at start, but then you just went on this. I think it was you won 4 out of the 6 in the end, and obviously topped the group. So, like us, straight through, skip that extra round, which is much needed when you're playing as many games as you are. To just have just to be able to not even think about it till March is a beautiful thing.
Exactly, and give the time for the players that are out injured to come back and join us on that really hard European run that we're going to face. But you're right, it didn't start in the most ideal way. We played Athens in the first game at the Amex, and the rain was torrential. It was like one of the most miserable games I've ever been to, because you're so hyped for it. First time in Europe. You're thinking this is dreamland. We're going to win. Athens, yes, they've got great European pedigree, but really in the grand scheme of things, a Premier League team that finished 6th should be beating a Greek team. Not to disrespect them, but and then they come and humble us. And we needed that. I think we were like deers in the headlights for sure. Even in the second game against Marseille, we started the game really poorly. We were 2-0 down at half time. And we had to call upon, Pascal Gross and I think a João Pedro penalty to save us. And João Pedro has been so important in the Europa League for us. Some real clutch moments from him that have sealed some very, very important wins. And especially in the 88th minute against Marseille on that last group game, was one of the best moments I've ever had as a Brighton fan. It really felt. I'll probably get laughed at by if any top 6 fans watch this, but it truly felt like the pinnacle. Brighton and Hove Albion have won a European group. If no one's familiar with the history of Brighton and Hove Albion, 27 years ago, we almost went out of existence. We were a goal and a point away from not existing anymore. If we dropped into the National League, our ground got sold, we wouldn't have had a home. We would have been very much like Bury. So 27 years later, you're playing against European giants in Ajax, who have won the European Cup 4 times, and you're beating them home and away. And you're winning against French giants Marseille on the last group game. It's dreamland for us. It really is. It gives me goosebumps talking about it. And the way João Pedro celebrated with the fans and he jumped into the East Stand and stood there, the European god that he is, for Brighton. What is it? 6 goals in 6 games. So yeah, we're just so lucky to be experiencing these times as a Brighton fan, and bring on the next round. We're so ready for it. We've got a couple of guys on our podcast who are from the US, and they've started supporting the Albion in the last sort of year, and they're so optimistic because all they've ever seen is Brighton's success.
Good times. Yeah.
And I love that. I love their optimism. I love their clean slate because I was sat there on, what was it, Thursday, 4-0 up against Tottenham, not comfortable. Yeah. I was thinking we could still lose this game. That's how I've been conditioned as a Brighton fan. But we've got our American guys saying we could win the Europa League. Why not? And truly, why not? Why can't we? If what are we, 4 wins away from winning the Europa League? It's monumental. So we're just going to sit here and enjoy these moments,
Yeah,
because we don't know. This could be the only one, and if it
100%.
is, then we've done well, and we can hold our heads high and look back on these memories that we've created, because there's been some unbelievable ones.
Yeah, I know certain West Ham fans sort of have a love-hate relationship with the European competitions and rate how we doing them differently to I do. But I know for me, like whenever I see us play in Europe, like you mentioned, for example, playing against Marseille as a Brighton fan, I know us going up against Lyon and Sevilla and teams like this, and looking at the group now when we go through into that round where we skip it, and you look down the list and you go, okay, AC Milan are there. Imagine watching West Ham in a competitive fixture at the San Siro. It just
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
feel. It just doesn't feel. Or it doesn't add up. And then I think back to those days of I saw us go out to Astrajiju, a club that doesn't even exist anymore, like twice in 2 seasons. I saw us get battered by Palermo in the UEFA Cup qualifying stages in when we had Carlos Tevez and stuff. It never stopped feeling special to me being able to play in
Mm.
Europe, and I 100% agree with your stance of like grasping it when you can, because like you say, you never know. We neither of us know if we're going to be able to be in Europe next year. This might not be a thing that's
100%.
going to exist. So
And for you guys as well, winning the Europa Conference League last season, I've seen so many, mainly top six fans, bantering West Ham.
yeah,
They're celebrating, singing champions this, champions that, Tin Pot Cup, whatever.
yeah,
I don't care. If Brighton won that, I would have pictures of that night plastered all over my house, just to remember that, just to hold on to that moment that
yeah,
we lift a European trophy. I don't care what one it is. I really don't. I was saying to people, okay, we come third in our group, we drop into the Europa Conference League. I don't care. That's still Europe. That's a second European competition that we get to play. How
yeah,
incredible for our football club. The fact that we've gone and won our group is mind boggling.
yeah,
So I think we can be joined in the fact that we're just enjoying this moment as fans of clubs that don't really get to enjoy much sometimes. So yeah, long may it continue.
What do you expect then towards the end of the season? Obviously, like you say, still in European football, still in the FA Cup, leagues going well. What are your expectations as a fan at the end of the season? What would you need to be happy?
I was talking on our podcast yesterday, and I think it was after we finished recording. I wish we recorded it because the reaction to what I said was hilarious. I said, if we come 17th and win the Europa League, I'm happy. As long
Sure.
as we
Yeah.
stay in the Premier League, I don't care. But winning that trophy would
Mhm.
be the absolute dream. What I would be okay with would be a really good, healthy run into the competition, whether that be quarterfinals, semi-finals. I would be happy with that, and then stay in that top 10. I
Yeah.
don't think Brighton have dropped out of the top 10 for, I think it's approaching 20 months now,
Yeah.
which is, again, a huge achievement for a football club that have been built really on nothing. And we're so thankful to Tony Bloom for giving us what he's given us as a Brighton fan himself. Um, so yeah, top 10 finish, a nice run in the FA Cup as well. Or do I? Because there's more fixtures. Uh, yeah,
And
let's-
they all add up at the end of the season. When you get to that stage
exactly.
and you're having to prioritize one or the other, they
And
all start to
replays
add
as
up.
well.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
there's any replays. But we had a really good run in the FA Cup last season as well. But that's what makes me confident to think that we could have a good run in the Europa League, is our
Yeah.
run in the FA Cup last season. And we
Yeah.
we only didn't get to the final through penalty shootout. We should have won that game. We
Mhm.
didn't. We take that on the chin. United embarrassed themselves in the final. But who am I to say that we would have gone on and given Man City a better game? But I would probably say we would have.
Sure. And to be fair, I probably would agree with you as well. I know a friend of mine, Ray, who I host a show with on our Patreon, last season where it wasn't going very well in the league, and we were sort of not quite in the relegation zone, but we were certainly flirting with the idea of a relegation battle, but doing very well in the Europa Conference League. I remember him turning around to me at some point and going, I always used to say I'd take 17th in a cup. But now we're here. I'm not enjoying it that much. And I
No.
think it is one of those things where you ask Ray, then after we get the win, it's a very, very different story because all of a
Mm,
sudden you have the trophy and we still go forward. But it is an interesting
yeah.
thing. Let's move on to the specifics. I mean, everyone I ever speak to about Brighton, speak about the players, speak about the way the club's run in terms of
Mm.
recruitment and how good it is. Who are those players that we should be aware of and even potentially afraid of going into Tuesday night?
Oh gosh, they're all injured, mate.
Yeah,
Um, as I said, Jack Hinshelwood has, risen to the very top. He
great
is,
finish against Spurs.
yeah,
Great finish.
incredible. So good for him to add to his tally. Getting that goal against Brentford earlier this season was
Yeah.
huge for him, huge for his confidence and playing out of position as well. He's predominantly a midfielder and being played at fullback at the moment, but that's where we need the most help. Um, and to be honest, I said as much on the Albion Obsessed podcast that it's his spot to lose now. Tarek Lamptey and Joel Veltman come back from injury whenever they come back. They've got a huge fight on their hands against an 18-year-old who has been with Brighton since the very first age group. And it's crazy because 10 years ago we made our academy. So 10 years ago, 9 years ago. So it'll be 10 years, June 24. And Tony Bloom said it will take 10-ish years for us to see the see the gold that
Mm.
comes from this academy that we've built, and we're seeing that now. So though it's coming true, and I think because of our injury crisis, we're a little bit comfortable with it because we think, okay, Jack Hinshelwood's done so well. Why can't these other players that have been replicating the way the first team want to act, the first team want to play, they can come straight in and be comfortable with that. So, and any other players that I can think of, obviously, João Pedro's been electric for us. £30 million signing from Watford. It's a little bit left field. We don't really do that. We don't really spend big money on players from the Championship. It would normally be a Alexis McAllister from Argentina or a Moises Caicedo from Ecuador that would come in and turn into 60 million, 100 million pound players. And it's good that we've invested that money in a player that can really step up to the plate at really important moments. And then you've got the likes of Pascal Gross, who has been a stalwart for us. His creativity, his intelligence on a football pitch, the way he controls a midfield, sometimes on his own, is a sight to behold. I very much compare him to probably a little bit more of a defensive Kevin De Bruyne.
Sure. Yeah,
He's
yeah, yeah.
just everywhere, and everything runs through him. One player we've been really impressed with this season is Jan-Paul van Hecke, the young centre back from the Netherlands, and I think he sort of stepped up to the plate last season when we played Man City and we needed a point to secure the Europa League status, and he had Haaland in his pocket for 90 minutes. And we were like, this guy, like before he was on loan at I think it was Blackburn, and some of the decisions he made were rash. So, like he got, I think, like 3 red cards in his time there, or 2 red cards, and it was ridiculous. And he'd done the same in pre-season against Chelsea when we played them in the States, and we were thinking, this is the guy that we've got to rely upon. Next to Lewis Dunk, who has been Brighton through and through, absolute legend for us. But these last few games, it's been Van Hecke that's been the leader at the back. It's been Dunkey that's been making the stupid decisions and the stupid mistakes, and cost us arguably 2 goals against Spurs. So we're seeing that shift now, and the rise of Jan-Paul van Hecke over this tiny period. Even Roberto De Zerbi has complimented it. It's been incredible, and I just hope that can continue. As I say, we've got one fit centre back. That is Jan-Paul van Hecke. Who plays alongside him? Does he look better with Lewis Dunk next to him? Probably. However, I think we're seeing the leader that he can be. So there's a couple of people to look out for.
And if I wouldn't ask this to any other fan, but if you were to say which one of the players would be the next big one the next one that's gonna go for 100 mil or whatever. Is there someone that you're looking at and thinking, or even is there someone that we're not really focusing on as the outsiders? Because obviously you look at it and you see these people, whereas us at the outsiders, we might just be staring directly at Matoma and thinking, "Oh my god, Matoma's great." Is there
Yeah.
someone else that we should be looking at more often or anything like that?
I think I'm going to go left field here and probably say one Brighton fans wouldn't really say is Simon Adingra.
Okay.
He's got that sort of directness about him that sort of likens him to the really direct wingers we've seen in the Premier League, Sadio
Yeah.
Mane, Mo Salah, people like that. It's about consistency for Simon Adingra. He's unplayable on his day. I think he's 21 years old, so he's still got a lot of time to mature. I think we could see a really big player in the next sort of 2-3 years. And then people will be saying, "Where's this guy come from?" You know, he's done really well this season, and we've had a few comments like that, but the consistency isn't quite there. And
Yeah.
something that Roberto De Zerbi demands from all of his young players. And I think the obvious one that people talk about is Evan Ferguson.
Yeah.
He's had a bit of a dip in form recently, but the hat trick against Newcastle this season, I think he's on 6 goals this season, 5 goals. Again, it's about the consistency. So we've got so many players coming through that if we all start really consistently trying to put these performances together, that we could have 3 or 4 players that are going for 70 to 90 million pounds. But then, as a Brighton fan, I don't really like to talk about that, because when is that shift? When do we become the club that don't sell our
Sure.
best players?
Yeah. Yeah.
When do
Yeah.
we become the club that hold on to these players and go on these incredible journeys as a team? But I think that I don't know where that is. I don't know where that shift is. Do you always stay a tiny team like Brighton? I don't. The Premier League is
Yeah.
so, not even the Premier League, just football in general is so hierarchy. Like we're Chelsea, we can spend £1 billion and finish 10th. Brighton can't do that. There's no chance.
Right. Yeah.
So they can hope that the next £100 million player from Brighton can come into their football club and solve all their issues. But we've seen with Moyes Caicedo, that's not the case.
Yeah.
I'm not foolish enough to say that he won't come good, because we saw him last season. He was unbelievable for us. Probably one of the best players I've ever seen in a Brighton shirt. So there is the quality there. But, these big teams spending big money on players that are coming out of a system that allows them to be the players they are and expecting them to do the same thing, it's not the case. So I don't know where that shift is. Maybe people in the comments can tell me, but yeah,
Potentially, and I mean, it's
really
definitely
weird.
something that we're having to wrangle with a little bit as well. Lucas Paquetá was obviously linked with a huge move away to Manchester City, as well as Declan Rice leaving, and thankfully he decided to have a little bit of a betting scandal, so that's kind of helped us, because now we get to watch him play every single week, which is quite nice. But obviously, we've had to come to terms with that, and we're looking at the likes of Kudus now and thinking, right, how are we going to be able to keep hold of this player? Like, how long are we going to be able to keep hold of this player? When is that number? Like with Declan Rice, it was
It's
always like
really
100
annoying.
million is the price to let him go. What is that number? How does it stick around?
It's so annoying from our perspectives, like how
Yeah.
we watch these players come in and into a system that just really allows them to be themselves, and they have one good performance, and the media are saying, okay, Chelsea are monitoring the situation of, Arsenal are monitoring the situation of. What situation? I'm sorry, but João Pedro's come in earlier this season. I think it was May last year. We confirmed the signing of him, and he's already being linked to Liverpool and Arsenal. I don't know. Why not just say, how good is João Pedro for Brighton? That's my frustration with that.
So let's talk about West Ham then. Who are the players that you admire from our side?
Yeah, Jared Bowen is ridiculous.
He's pretty
isn't he?
good, isn't he?
He's pretty good. Funny, I saw a young picture of him the other day that was circulating on Twitter. He was in a Hereford United shirt,
Hmm.
and that's the team we played and drew against to not die. So I don't know if Hereford ghosts will come back and haunt us on Tuesday. But yeah, he's some player, and I think I'm quite thankful that I believe Kudus can't play. Is that right?
Yeah, we're not 100% certain yet, but it seems like he's going to have to go to AFCON and he won't be available.
I have to thank former Brighton manager for that, Chris Hughton, for making him
Doing
fly out
doing
early.
bits for Ghana, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, there's Paquetá. Antonio loves to score against Brighton, so I'm sure he'll pop up. I don't know how good he's been this season. I think I've seen a few
He's
people moaning
I think
about
he's
him.
injured as well. We don't
Oh,
know
he's
what's going
injured.
on.
Oh,
We were
not
told
that.
like 2 months ago at this point that he was out for 2 weeks, and we haven't heard a single thing since. So God knows what's going on with him. Paquetá, another one, might be missing as well. He pulled up against. He got injured in the 30th minute or something. Went off, and that's he's hitting. He's we're not sure yet whether or not he's going to be ready or not. So
So it's just Jared Bowen versus Brighton. I'm joking. There's
basically,
obviously
yeah, a little bit. It
there's
does
more.
feel a little bit like
Um,
that right now.
I hate playing against Thomas Suchek. I think
Sure, sure.
he's always that type of midfielder that's going to absolutely bully the smaller players on the Brighton team for sure, and he always seems to pop up with a set piece goal. He's very powerful, so I've always admired him. Um, but off the top of my head, I can't really think of anyone else. But
Makes
obviously,
sense.
I've seen your run in form. We'll forget about the 5-0 to Fulham, and we'll think about the four
Appreciate it.
games you have won in
Mm,
your last 5 Premier League games, and you've had some incredible results against
yeah,
Spurs, against United, against Arsenal. I can't remember who the other one was, but
Man United.
United. There you go. So it's yeah, it's a scary prospect to play West Ham at the moment because you've bounced back perfectly from that defeat to Fulham, and yeah, going to the London Stadium. I don't think we've lost there yet. I think
Mm,
the win at the Amex for you guys was your first win against us since we've been promoted to the Premier League. So we've been a little bit of a bogey team for you guys.
massively. Yeah.
So I hope for my sake that can continue on Tuesday. But we shall see. I'm not overly confident, as I say. We've got so many injury problems, but so have you. So I guess it's no excuse.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting. To give you some idea of the level of boginess, I told this story on the preview, so I apologize if you already heard this. But I was at a wrestling show of all things when we faced you earlier in the season and couldn't get signal on my phone. And then as I was walking out of the venue, a subscriber came up to me and said, "Oh, how are you? I didn't know you were here." Blah blah blah. We had a little conversation about the wrestling show and all that. And he went, "Oh yeah, and of course we beat Brighton." And I was like, "Hang on, whoa, whoa, what do you mean we beat Brighton?" And it was so the joy in my heart was so much at that moment. I just hugged him. I just straight up hugged him because I was like, I cannot believe what you're saying right now because that's just not something that happens. Like you've completely had our number for such a long time that the idea of us even managing to do that is beyond the pale. And it puts it in an interesting perspective going into this game
Yeah.
because obviously, like you say, you've got a crap ton of injuries. We don't have as many, but we have basically our key, what feels like a lot of our key players missing right now in
Mm,
Paquetá and Kudus and Antonio potentially all being out as well.
mm.
How do you see it going at the London Stadium?
Oh, I first of all, I hope that we don't see James Milner at centre back. I think that's
He's played
probably
everywhere yet again this season, and I can't act like
he
I don't
has.
love him for it, but at the same time, it's a scary prospect.
I mean, at fullback, he's given us some terrifying performances, but against Spurs, I've got to come out and say that he was until he came off our best player. He was
Yeah.
unbelievable. He was playing somewhat of a winger's role, and it's like,
Mm.
what is it? 38-year-old James Milner running down the wing against Pedro Porro. That is ridiculous. And beating him multiple times. Yeah, I think centre back is the only position James Milner hasn't played on his CV.
Mm.
So I'm sure he'll be eager to do that. I'm not overly confident. I can't lie.
Sure.
The way West Ham beat us earlier in the season, I think there's a strong possibility of that happening again. Um, However, you know, as I said, the mentality shifted in our team at the moment. I think De Zerbi's got them believing that, you know, whatever happens, whatever circumstances surround us, we are still a good team and we can still go out there and give world-class players problems. That's what we saw against Spurs. So I hope that continues. Let's just sit on the fence for now, as I normally do on opposition podcasts, because I don't want to get berated, and I'll say a 2-2 draw.
That's fair. That's fair. I think a lot of fans from West Ham's perspective aren't certain. I have no clue what's going to happen. If I was to be pushed right now, I'd say 1-1, but I've literally got no clue. It could go either way. I think the injuries play a lot of it. I said on the preview, you know, listen, if we had Paquetá, if we had Bowen, if we had Kudus and they were in form, then I would fancy our chances quite strongly. Without them, God knows what's going to happen. God knows. We'll just have to wait and find out on Tuesday. But thank you very much, Joe, for joining us. If you want to hear more from the Brighton perspective, which I would heavily recommend, link in the description below for Joe's podcast, The Albion Obsessed, which is very good. I'd highly recommend you go check it out. And we'll be back on Tuesday for an hour and 5 minutes before kickoff for the build-up show. Watch along and all that good stuff. But until then, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you're new around here. And see you later. Bye, everyone. Bye.